The first time she stepped into that house, nobody noticed her footsteps. Not because the floor was soft, but because her presence was quiet, like morning dew settling on dry ground. She greeted everyone softly, her voice calm, respectful, and low, the kind of voice people often mistake for weakness. They answered her greeting without looking at her face. Some nodded carelessly. Some ignored her completely. Some smiled, but their smiles carried sharp edges. In that house, noise was mistaken for wisdom, and loud laughter was treated like intelligence. Silence, they believed, meant emptiness. She was the wife they never wanted, the woman they never chose, the daughter-in-law they mocked in whispers and in jokes that were never really jokes. She worked quietly in the kitchen, tying her wrapper firmly, rolling up her sleeves without complaint, her mind steady even when her hands trembled. The kitchen smelled of palm oil and onions, of pepper and heat, of stories yet untold. As she stood by the gas stove, the blue flame dancing like a secret spirit beneath the pot, she stirred the soup slowly, carefully, as if each turn of the spoon carried a prayer. Behind her, laughter erupted. "She doesn't talk much," one voice said. "Is she even intelligent?" another added. "If quiet people had sense, they would speak," someone laughed. Their words hit her back like small stones, but she did not turn. Inside her chest, her heart beat steadily, not fast, not angry, not afraid. She had learned long ago that storms do not announce themselves before they destroy roofs. She had come from a place where silence was taught as strength, where elders said, "A river that makes no noise can still drown a man." But these people did not know rivers. They only knew shallow streams that shouted as they ran. The oil in the pan began to sizzle, a sound sharp enough to cut through laughter. One of them pointed at her phone on the counter. "She's always pressing that phone. Probably chatting nonsense," someone said. She picked up the phone calmly, checking the time, her eyes focused, her face unreadable. She had things planned that did not require announcements. The chicken in the pan browned slowly, beautifully, patiently, just like her life. They mocked her kindness, too. When she greeted them, they said she was pretending. When she served them food, they said she was showing off. When she stayed quiet, they said she was dull. No action pleased them, because they had already decided who she was. Yet every night, when the house slept, she sat alone reading, learning, thinking, growing. She stored knowledge the way farmers store seeds, out of sight, but full of promise. She believed in timing. She believed in God. She believed that truth does not need to shout to be heard. One afternoon, a problem entered the house quietly, just like she once did. Money went missing. Important documents disappeared. Accusations began flying like arrows in a village square. Voices rose. Tempers burned. Blame searched for the weakest place to land. Eyes slowly turned toward her. "She's always quiet," someone said carefully. "You never know what such people are thinking," another added. The silence in the room grew thick, heavy, dangerous. She stood there, hands folded, breathing gently, watching fear expose itself in others. For the first time, she spoke, not loudly, not angrily, but clearly. Her words landed like stones dropped into still water, creating ripples no one expected. She explained details only someone observant could know. She mentioned times, movements, habits, facts. The room shifted. People glanced at one another. Confidence melted into confusion. They had underestimated her listening. They had mocked her watching. Quiet people, after all, see everything. The truth surfaced slowly, painfully, and when it did, it pointed away from her. Shame entered the room, uninvited. No one apologized immediately. Pride stood in the way. But something had changed. They no longer laughed easily. They no longer dismissed her presence. Still, she returned to the kitchen, back to the fire, back to her calm ways, as if nothing had happened. That frightened them more than anger ever could. Because strength that does not brag is dangerous. Wisdom that does not insult is powerful. And patience that survives mockery always wins in the end. From that day, the house began to learn a lesson it never wanted to learn. that silence is not emptiness, that kindness is not foolishness, that humility often hides greatness, and that a quiet woman, once underestimated, can become the strongest voice in the room without ever raising her tone. Her story was just beginning, and the fire on that stove had not finished cooking what destiny had prepared. That night, sleep refused to visit the house. Not because of noise, but because silence had changed its meaning. Doors were closed, yet thoughts wandered freely, knocking on memories people tried to forget. She lay on her mat quietly, eyes open, staring into the darkness, listening to the breathing of the house like one listens to a living thing. She knew something was coming. Not danger, exposure. When people realize they were wrong, they either change or become crueler. Before dawn, she rose and prayed softly, her lips barely moving, her heart firm. She asked for strength, not revenge. She asked for clarity, not praise. Morning came with a strange heaviness. Breakfast was late. Voices were careful. No one joked. The same people who once laughed loudly now watched her from the corners of their eyes, as if silence had taught her secrets they feared she knew. She moved through the kitchen calmly, lighting the stove, arranging utensils, her wrapper tied with quiet confidence. The fire came on suddenly, too suddenly. Oil splashed. Flames jumped. A shout filled the kitchen. For a moment, panic tried to take over. Someone screamed her name. Another blamed her carelessness. But she did not run. She turned off the gas smoothly, covered the pot, and stepped back just in time. The danger passed, but fear remained hanging in the air like smoke. That was when she spoke again, softly, slowly. "If I was careless," she said, "the house would be burning now." No one replied. They remembered the missing money, the missing documents, the way she had stood calm while others shook. From that day, small things began to surface. Food spoiled when someone lied. Plans failed when pride led them. Secrets slipped out when anger spoke too freely. And each time trouble came, eyes turned toward the quiet woman, not with mockery now, but with confusion and a growing fear. How does she always remain calm? How does she know what to do? They did not know that calmness is trained in hardship, that wisdom grows in silence. Then the real test arrived. A visitor came, important, respected, dangerous to disappoint. He asked questions no one expected. He demanded explanations no one prepared. Voices stumbled. Stories conflicted. The house stood on the edge of shame. All eyes turned toward her. Not because she was responsible, but because she had become the steady ground beneath shaking feet. She stepped forward slowly. Her voice did not rise. Her words did not accuse. She explained truth carefully, respectfully, leaving no space for lies to hide. The visitor listened, nodded, smiled. And just like that, disaster passed. After he left, the house exhaled as one. That was the moment realization finally settled like harmattan dust. They had mocked a pillar. They had laughed at their shelter. Still, pride delayed apologies. But life does not wait for pride to mature. Soon, challenges grew heavier. Money became tight. Unity weakened. And when confusion returned, louder voices failed first. Only her quiet strength remained. One evening, she stood alone again by the stove, fire glowing softly beneath the pot. Someone entered the kitchen behind her. "I didn't know," the voice said, trembling. She did not turn immediately. Some apologies come late. Some regrets come heavy. "I judged you," the voice continued. She turned slowly, eyes gentle, not victorious. "It's easy to judge silence," she said. "It's harder to understand it." Tears followed. Words failed. For the first time, the house bowed, not in posture, but in spirit. They had learned too late, but not too late to change. That night, laughter returned. Not mocking, but warm. And she remained the same. Still quiet. Still kind. Still strong. Because real power does not change when recognized. It simply continues. And deep inside that house, a lesson burned brighter than the fire on the stove. Never underestimate the power of a quiet woman. She may be silent, but she is never empty. The rain started that evening without warning. Not heavy, not loud, just steady. It tapped gently on the roof, the kind of rain that feels like a reminder rather than a threat. She stood by the window, watching the drops trace silent paths down the glass, each one carrying a story, each one refusing to rush. The house behind her was calm now. Too calm. Time had softened the voices that once mocked her. Age had humbled the pride that once stood tall. That was when the eldest woman in the house called her name. Not sharply, not carelessly, but with respect. She turned. The old woman's eyes were wet, not from age alone, but from understanding that had arrived late. "We wronged you," she said, her voice breaking. "We mistook your silence for weakness." The room felt smaller suddenly, like truth had filled all the empty spaces. The quiet woman did not rush to speak. She allowed the moment to breathe. Then she said softly, "Silence is not absence. It is choice." Tears fell freely now, not just from one face, but from many. They remembered the laughter, the whispers, the careless words thrown like stones at a calm river. And they saw clearly, for the first time, that the river had carried them all along. "I stayed," she continued gently, "not because I was weak, but because I believed love could teach what anger never will." Her voice trembled slightly, not from pain, but from truth finally being heard. "I endured," she said, "because sometimes the strongest people are the ones who choose peace when war would be easier." Silence returned, but this time it was holy. The rain outside grew heavier, as if the sky itself was weeping with them. The eldest woman reached for her hands, hands that had cooked without praise, served without thanks, endured without complaint. "Forgive us," she whispered. The quiet woman nodded slowly. Forgiveness did not erase the past, but it softened the future. That night, as lamps flickered and the house slept, she returned once more to the kitchen. She lit the stove. The flame rose, steady, controlled, alive. She smiled faintly. Fire, when respected, cooks food. Fire, when mocked, burns houses. And so does silence. From that day on, the house never laughed at quietness again. Children were taught to listen. Women were taught to value their inner strength. Men were taught that wisdom does not always announce itself. And her story spread, not as gossip, but as a lesson. That the loudest person is not always the strongest. That patience can outlast cruelty. That humility often walks ahead of greatness. And that a quiet woman, when rooted in wisdom, love, and purpose, can change an entire home without ever raising her voice. Because silence is not emptiness. It is power, waiting for the right moment to speak.